All right, and we are live. And what is a live stream program without a little bit of stress? We're working through our technical difficulties here, but you've got Mac McCullough from Willard Library with another installment of Peeks into the Past. Tonight's subject: Tales of Battle Creek's Manufacturing Pioneers. E.W. Roberts wrote in 1931, "It is doubtful that if any American community of comparable size has produced more industries that have become world famous than Battle Creek." I don't know if that's true or not, but we have a lot of really cool stuff. And to help us walk through it and walk through our slides today, we have the intrepid Kurt Thornton.
Hey there, and I've explained to Mac and Ray that I don't know a lot about this. I'm going to do a lot of nodding and smiling, so we'll see how this all goes.
Oh, Kurt, you've forgotten more than most of us will ever know.
There you go. And Ray really has got this all down. So no pressure, Ray. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure, Ray. Ray's carrying even more. I got Ray DeBruler here. He's a history professor at Kellogg Community College and the author of the manuscript from which we are borrowing a lot of material, titled "Before There Was Cereal: A Brief History of Manufacturing in Battle Creek." Welcome, Ray.
Thanks.
And part of the
I'm going to nod my head a lot too. I'm going to do. This is what I do. Oh,
oh, you look very professorial.
Yes. Oh, I didn't wear a tie.
Oh, the professorial thing. I like the guitar in the background too. He's like, I'm expecting him to pull the guitar and sing a song to us too. It's like, that's pretty cool. Oh no,
yes,
that's cool. It's like
kind of in a music room.
All right, and then also we're hoping, we still have hopes. Someone who's helped us develop this whole program, Robb Gillespie, who is an assistant professor of the Department of Geological and Environmental Sciences at Western Michigan University, and a very good speaker on steam power, which will constitute quite a bit of our program tonight.
So we'll sit here quietly for the first 20 minutes, and then we'll pick up with the grocery carts.
No, I have faith. I think we're going to do great. So, yeah, as I was saying, Peeks into the Past, Tales of Battle Creek's Manufacturing Pioneers. This is really a fascinating story. And, one of the things I wanted to start with here, there's a plat of the original map. And one of the questions we always ask, we do this program, is why Battle Creek? Why did so much manufacturing really get its start in Battle Creek? And we've covered the story before about water power in Battle Creek. But my question to my esteemed colleagues here is, what was it about Battle Creek that made it so fertile for some of the innovations that we're going to be talking about today? A number of industries with national and international reputations in product lines really emanated from a very small city in Frontier, Michigan. What do you think, guys?
First, I'll just jump in. That opening picture was the three of us posing before the show started, so I hope everyone appreciates that. And then second is I suppose, and Kurt can jump in at any time.
Oh yeah.
Fertile's the right word, right? You can grow a lot of stuff here, so you're growing food. You need to thresh it, you need to combine it, you need to bale, all those things. And so all this stuff sort of, we can just keep it that this theme, it feeds on each other, right? And so we have people who have the blacksmith sort of mentality. I'm going to make this thing, I'm going to make it work. They aren't really trained engineers, at least initially. And so there's cereal because there's manufacturing. There's manufacturing because there's cereal. It kind of is a cyclical thing.
I was at the location between, once again, the location between Chicago and Detroit. Even though initially we didn't have the railroads here until 1840s, and so, but they were like, the idea of McCamley coming in here and seeing that the drop between the Battle Creek River and the Kalamazoo, that he could harness the water power, which that was what people used back then. It was before steam became really popular, and so they harnessed the drop in the water to make mills wheels turn, and that brought manufacturing into downtown Battle Creek. But like Ray said, it's there was grain being grown around here. There were crops being grown, and eventually cereal became an obvious choice to process and things like that. But one of the things I wanted to make sure people knew that we were trying to stay away from the cereal industry in this talk. This was because obviously Battle Creek was a cereal industry, but Ray has done a really great job doing a story about other manufacturers that were here in Battle Creek, other than just the cereal folks. So, which I'm fascinated with, because mostly I know the Kellogg stuff and the Post things, whereas Ray just, was going to throw it back on Ray. He does a really good job researching all these different industries that got started here that weren't the cereal companies. But Sands McCamley having the mill race, Doug, which people always ask questions like, when he hired these people to come and dig the mill race, where did they stay? Because this was like the wilderness, and there were log cabins and stuff here. But supposedly he had like 40, and they say Irish immigrants, which I have no idea where they pulled that from. Obviously, it was 40 people that came and dug the mill race by hand, which was pretty amazing. But
with shovels and wooden wheelbarrows.
Yep.
Yep. And you can see, and that's what folks are looking at here, is this plat, and you can see where my cursor is. That was the mill race that connected the Kalamazoo River to the Battle Creek River. And what we have here is like this little ecosystem, and these sites A, B, and C, these were some of the earliest shops, and the Pioneer Grist Mill, the Iron Foundry, the Upton Brown, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the wagon shop. That was the initial thrust, and a lot of the Nichols and Shepards, before they had their plant, they worked in some of these shops in this area, and so it was really kind of like, we think today about our business incubators downtown. That's essentially what we had here, but like Ray said, these were blacksmiths, tinkerers. These are not engineers, and so their accomplishments are even more extraordinary when you think about it in that light.
So they were practical.
They were practical. They looked at something and figured it out. Yep.
Yeah.
And this next slide is really just the next phase of that. You have Sands McCamley's first sawmill site, which is about where the Kellogg Foundation is, right, Matt? Kurt?
Yep. Whoever one of us. Yeah. Yes, it is.
You both know that.
I was always fascinated that when they built the first schoolhouse here in Battle Creek, which was a log schoolhouse, they had to get the wood for the desks from Bellevue, because we didn't have a sawmill here in Battle Creek in 1834 when they built the school. So they had to bring wood from Bellevue down, because they didn't do that here at that time. They had a grain mill, but they did not have a sawmill yet.
Yeah. So and there's the Fargo and Ward site, and I didn't know this, that the Fargo involved in this site, and then later, of course, the Ward building descends from that. But Fargo is part of Wells Fargo that we all know today. That originated in Battle Creek, and then we have the first Nichols and Shepard site on what today we know as today we know it as parking lot, but State Street, then Canal Street. And that was built in 1848. And then let's see. This seemed important at the time. E.W. Roberts, Pioneer Days in Old Battle Creek, which you can get at the library, or you can get it at the Historical Society. I think you can probably get it at the museum as well. It's a nice little pocket pamphlet written in 1931, but it was 1858 before Nelson A. Hicks and Horace H. Bidwell painted the first threshing machine they turned out. It was called the Stewart Patent Vibrator. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's just jump right in. Oh, and I guess the other thing that's really cool about this is that, Battle Creek had a swagger. It just absolutely had a swagger. And if you look back through those old newspaper accounts, I mean, it was just forever boasting of the city's, manufacturing prowess. And it was a going ahead city. Growing pretty rapidly, and our industrial output, in spite of our size, was really, really high.
It was.
So Nichols and Shepard. Tell us a little bit about Nichols and Shepard, Ray.
Oh, I can tell you a little because Rob's not. I can tell you a lot because Rob's not here. And we're not recording this, right? So
no.
So it's all good. Yeah. Well, I kind of was glancing through what we had talked about before, kind of our notes, and it starts as a blacksmith shop, and then they start to see the need for the production of heavier machinery, and it eventually evolves into the production of steam power, and then later kerosene, and then gasoline, and then production falls off after that because once steam power takes a hold, Battle Creek doesn't really. We talked about this before. I got in my notes that Battle Creek doesn't really take off after steam power for a variety of reasons, which Kurt could address, I think, in a little bit here. But Nichols and Shepard get the ball rolling, so to speak, and both of them show up pretty regularly in the newspaper accounts and ads, and all of it with those nice profiles of their machines. And there's always something else. This one's a good example of somebody posing quite proudly on it, saying this is what you can get. And the advertising kind of plays to the regions where they're sold. The Red River model is a good example of that, which I think you have a slide of a little bit later, man. Yeah, okay. And so a lot of this stuff is made here, and certainly it was used here, but it was sold all across the country. And so this is not, I mean, it starts out, I guess we call it a mom and pop operation in some sense. But it fairly quickly becomes not just statewide and regional wide, but it's a national thing.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about this sort of critical mass. There was a lot of competition at the time, which they obviously prevailed over. But John Nichols, I had read in the research for this that he had actually went to California to follow the gold rush. But didn't really catch gold fever, and didn't make a claim out there, but instead came back, and as he came along, he talked to a lot of farmers about their challenges, and really took that knowledge and plowed it, so to speak, into his business.
Oh, that was a good time.
Nice.
That was nice.
I'm a professional guy, so what can I tell you? But
and they moved the technology along pretty fast. It starts in 1848, and by 54, they're producing steam-powered machines. So these are guys who have some vision, certainly. And that kind of gets back to, there they are, there's the guys with the vision. And it gets back to that muscular approach to Battle Creek manufacturing history, right? And I do like it. It's a guy pulling something, and it made me think later about it, because there are later engines called the oil pull, right? So there's something to that, perhaps. I don't know. May not. Yeah.
He was Nichols was a pretty interesting guy. I mean, he famously didn't give his workers the New Year's Day off because to get a good start in the year, you needed to put in a good days of work. But on the other side of that, and you mentioned this in your manuscript as well, Ray, that he knew the first name, he knew the names of all of his employees. He was really right there working with them.
This isn't right. This is an era or a period in a company where the guy whose name was on the door was also the guy who was on the factory floor doing the work. So Nichols and Shepard certainly were familiar with how to make this stuff. And it's later as things become larger and get sold and bought, conglomerations and all of that, where the guy whose name is on the door might not know how to make anything. But with Nichols and Shepard, they certainly knew how to make this stuff. And their production, it might not sound fast, but so they start making steam stuff in 54, and a year later, they've produced 6 steam engines and have a contract for 4 more. So that's a production of 10 in a single year, which sounds small, but that's really pretty impressive for a company that's not been around that long.
Well, and they're doing everything by hand.
And it's all by
Yeah, they couldn't order something from China to be brought in. They had to make it. They had to make it themselves. It's like
This photo is not of the actual factory. It's the site of where the factory stood on what again we used to think of as State Street. I don't know what.
I told Mac and Ray, I think when I was young, when you'd walk along here on that building on the right where it says hardware on the side of it, which you can't see in this picture, there was a plaque that read told about Nichols and Shepard founding the company there. Of course, someone asked me what it said. I'm going, I was a kid. I don't remember. I just walked by, and then Mom would point it out to me that was where Nichols and Shepard were. And they go, what happened to the plaque? And I'm going, it's probably buried in the ground somewhere there because probably nobody wanted it. But I said that was. I want to throw this into. I can remember the mill race. I got to see the mill race. I remember that as a kid walking down there and getting to look over and see the water run through there.
See, that's not where I thought that story was going, Kurt. I thought you were going to say when you were young, Nichols and Shepard rode your school bus with you or something like that.
They drove my school bus. Come on,
Yeah.
let's be real here. It was steam powered.
Right. It was huge.
Of course, you got to explain this because I'm sorry, my friends and when we used to make jokes about the Nichols and Shepard's vibrating machines. I'm sorry, we made jokes about it, but it's how the grain was separated in the threshing machine. It would shake back and forth, and the grain would fall through it and be separated from the chaff. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was how that worked. But I'm sorry, we grew up at a time when that was a joke.
I'm not familiar with the joke.
Ray, after the program, I will talk to you about that.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, this really heralded a new age. I mean, in agriculture, and we'll talk about that. But the advantage of this vibrator, not the first vibrator out there, but it's supposedly superior because of the engineering that went into it and the paddles that actually beat the engine down. And I don't know what the yields were like, but it had to be a huge time saver.
Oh yeah. Doing it by hand took forever in the old days.
Yeah. And there you have it, bringing, the sheaves that they will soon bring in.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a tremendous labor-intensive process.
Yes.
Actually, I was talking to my father over the weekend, who grew up on a farm, and he remembers, and he grew up long after this. He was born in 1937, but he remembers, separating the grain from the shaft by hand. He also remembers their first tractor. I mean, it really changed the whole way of
farming. Oh my Lord, yeah, that made a huge difference in time consumption. Yeah, oh yeah.
And that picture shows them on the threshing floor of the barn. So the picture before with that thresher, you just replace that with that. So they would put that, or the one before that. I'm sorry. Keep going. Yeah. That one. Yeah. So that would be there as a replacement, right? So it's an added expense. Certainly, not everyone could afford one.
Right.
But it was a time saver, and so farmers can put their money together and share one.
Well, I was going to ask you how threshing happened before the advent of some of these implements, and it was people working together, right?
Yeah, it didn't change much. There's a pretty basic concept. You got to separate the wheat from the chaff, and so you beat the daylights out of the wheat to get that, and hope that you make the chaff blow away. And you do it in the barn with the two sides of the window or the doors open so it can blow through.
Right.
And in a perfect orientation, you'd have east-west facing doors, so you can get the wind. There's very few barns of that era had north-south facing windows. The big doors, anyway, were north-south. They were east-west facing, so you can blow through. And this solved that problem. Once again, though, adding some expense in that otherwise they wouldn't have had. So it's time saver. It adds expense. It could arguably it's fewer jobs than for people. You don't need as many people. So technology has its advantages, but then there could be a problem too.
So Ray, did farmers buy this together, or did they was it like a rental thing where it would go around from farm area to farm area? I mean, they would all pay to have this come through and go and separate their grain. Would they?
It could. For this model, or for these models, I'm fairly certain it was like a collective purchase sort of thing. But once they were mobile, you would hire somebody to come in, or you could hire somebody to come in, and so you could actually, presume, make at least somewhat of a living going from farm to farm with your thresher.
Okay.
And, doing it. I would think that was probably easier to do once they were steam powered.
Yeah.
Of course, later on, we have pictures of the modern ones because now they still go from farm to farm. Some of them do because they're huge computerized machines now.
Yeah.
Yes, guided.
Jumping ahead.
We're jumping ahead. But this really, the company really took off from this point forward. After the vibrator, and you see some of the schematics here, kind of a cutout of the actual vibrator machine there. Mm-hmm. You can see the paddles. And it also, and then this is where we'll miss Robb a little bit. Perhaps you can elucidate on it a little bit, Ray. But a lot of competition. Both not just around the state and the country, but right here in Battle Creek.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was room for two, certainly, with Rumley and those guys, which is all the more impressive when they don't put each other out of business, right? They both thrive, and so that tells you that one, their national network is pretty strong, and two, there's demand. And so if we think of it like the auto industry, you can have Ford and GM in the same town, and
Kellogg Post. It's like
Kellogg Post, right? But we weren't supposed to talk about cereal, so I'm not
sorry.
Right. So I've been warned. So they're not putting each other out of business. They are competitors. But what it spurs really is innovation, because if these guys are going to be here a couple blocks away, mine's got to be better. Just like everybody knows that Chevy's better than Ford. I mean, it's just science, right? Advance is better than Rumley.
So did they steal employees from each other, or did they try to steal employees from each other? I mean, with the knowledge of different innovations, or did they just go look at it and try to copy it?
That's a great question. There's a lot of copying going on, but I'm not sure if there's any 19th century industrial espionage going on. There had to have been, though.
Probably.
Although there were certainly, and even on this slide, we'll talk a little about Elon Marsh, who worked for Nichols and Shepard, but also got in a dispute over the ownership of patent, which is an interesting story in of its own right. The gentleman in the group photo, the patriarch there, is Zebedee Macomber, who invented a traction engine. We'll get to see that. Elon Marsh, who started with Nichols and Shepard, did some other things, and ended up with Advanced Marsh Steam Company, which we'll also talk about a little bit later. And Richard Barnes Merritt, also an innovator of his time, and part of the Merritt family, which we'll also talk a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. It's all connected.
Yeah. And there you have the Macomber traction engine, built in 1873, and the Merritt Kellogg steam tractor engine in the early 1870s. These are big honking metal machines with metal. They call them tires. I always think that's so interesting because they're just metal rings. There's no rubber on them.
Yeah. And I wish Robb were here, because I remember when he was talking about this slide, the difference in the technology, because the one on the left is basically a steam engine on a platform, and the one on the right, the boiler's part of the construction, and so it's an advance in technology as well.
Yeah. And then James Stephen Upton. These are all this was like a Renaissance man. He went to law school, had a practice, but then devoted his time into manufacturing and developing the combine, I suppose.
Combine.
Exactly, a combine.
Okay, yep.
It combines some things.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just see a lot of the things that they produce there. They're making the wheels there, bending tires, I should say. Truing tires.
Yeah. Which were pretty rough on the roads.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they put rubber on them. Now, that's the one where the trains are fanciful. Is that right, Kurt? That's not really accurate?
Yeah, the train on the left there would be going down Michigan Avenue. That is not correct. The streetcar is correct. There's a streetcar out there, but not the train.
Well, it looks good.
Yes.
They look like they're going to collide.
Because this is where the Benke lot, I don't know if people know where that is, Michigan Avenue and Union Street. It's this is where there's now an empty lot, and in the back there's the Benke warehouse, which was part of this factory at one time. But it was a huge facility.
Yeah.
And the pollution was immense as well. I mean, if it didn't have a smokestack, it was no good, right? I mean, you could see things churning out all that smoke.
So what was this? We turn now to the Red River Special, which you mentioned a minute ago, Ray. What was the significance of this innovation, this next line? Because it was their brand for a long time after that.
Right. A couple of things. It's on wheels, right? So it's not like the other one that had kind of little pads on the bottom, right? So it's mobile. And it's got that tube which would bend out, and which would blow all the straw into giant piles, which I think we have pictures of a little bit later. So it's got some mobility to it. It looks more complex. It's got more doodads on it, right? to get not too technical there. But has that blower going out the back and its mobility are two significant things there. And that's where we're calling it the Red River Special is kind of the, there's no Red River, right, in Battle Creek. So it's you use a name that sounds sort of like Plains area or the West, right? And so you can market the heck out of those things. And of course, that's, when you think about Iowa or other states that that aren't Michigan, they have flat areas where they grow grains, right? And so or wheat. So you market that to those folks, and they'll buy them up and they'll ship them out of Battle Creek.
Chris, I'm always fascinated that these were horse-drawn, because I'm always thinking, I'm looking at them going like, well, but a tractor must have pulled these, and I realized they did have steam tractors. Probably, I don't know about this time, but they were generally horse-drawn machines that were taken from place to place by horse team.
Yeah.
And here's a later generation of the Red River Special.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see here, Ray?
Well, it's like a proto combine. There's a gas tank on it, which is in advance, so to speak. And so it's got the so it's gathering the wheat and and it's going to blow it. Now the blower's the little thing in the back, you can see the little the white thing in the back there. I keep wanting to point. No one can see me point. But those wheels are still made out of metal, right? And it's not entirely clear what pulls it. It could be horse drawn, I suppose, but maybe by this time there might be a steam engine that could pull it.
It looks like there are tracks underneath it.
Yeah.
And so that
something would be pulling in front. Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah. So this is in advance. Once again, I gotta stop saying that. In that it's gasoline powered. Now there you can see the big pile of the straw that the blowers shoot out the back end. And there's a dude there in the front with his oil can. That thing's got to, everything gets gummed up, so it's got to be constantly oiled and taken care of. And those belts are huge, and they break down, and you got to be able to put them back together because you only have so much time. Once you start threshing, you really got to keep going. So the conditions have to be just right. And then you get out there and do it. You got to have your the wagon behind it is presumably got wood or coal on it that they're using to burn. Oh, it's black. Looks like black smoke coming out. So and it's still using horses to pull the wagons because you can see the horses in the background.
Right. So Ray, this would be a steam engine tractors driving the threshing machine that's off in the distance. The belt is going to the threshing machine. Is that correct?
That's correct. And you got to keep them far away because pretty much everything there is flammable.
Sure. Well, the grain and stuff, if that would. But the stuff that's shooting out of the tube there, I would think that'd be dry.
Yep.
Well, hey, that would be bad. That would be bad.
I don't know if there are any pictures of any of these things going up in flames, but I've seen them in action, and it's really impressive. But then you think, one spark. The whole operation is going up.
And I think was it Robb or you, Ray, that said that like you said, they had to be there monitoring it constantly. It wasn't like you could start the thing up and walk away and come back in 30 minutes to see how it's going. You had to keep an eye on it because these machines. Even though at the time these were the top end of technology, they were steam engines that you had to keep an eye on because the steam had to be kept up and the pressure did, and you had to make sure, like I said, everything was oiled so the friction didn't get bad. These were high intense, but once again, it cut down the labor force. Even though that person is working and just watching the steam engine, it has really helped cut down the how many people it takes to work these things.
Right. Oh, there we are again.
I was saying that's me on the right. I think that would be me on the right.
Yeah. And so that's the oil gas engine. Oh, wait, so there's our next set of guys. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Edwin Nichols, the next generation of the Nichols to run this, and and he really kind of turned the company into more of a national. Expanded its product. Is that fair to say, Ray?
Yeah, absolutely. He in fact he was even in the he was not just a prominent Battle Creek citizen. He served on the state constitutional convention in 1910. So he's a statewide guy. Okay. He had connections.
Yeah.
I was telling Mac that this weekend we had a rededication of some stained glass windows at the First United Methodist Church downtown, and one of the windows was donated by Edwin Nichols, and I actually had to look him up because I didn't realize who he was. I was slipping on my history stuff. I missed the last meeting we had, so I missed that name. But
See, these meetings are really important, Kurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you have the manuscripts as well. So there's.
Ooh, zing!
Yeah. Just want to throw that out.
Oh, we love you, Kurt. Like I said, you've forgotten more than most of us will ever know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke, and that guy in the oil can with the oil can back there. When I first saw that, I thought he was sitting up there taking his coffee break, his union break. But they didn't have unions at the time, at least not there, and not much in Battle Creek. But you talk a little bit about what they did to to quell any dissent or grievance.
Yeah, that was almost a Battle Creek pioneering moment in labor history. It's something that it's sort of in a wider scope called company paternalism or corporate paternalism, where you do enough things for your employees that they won't be inclined to want to join a union, and so. Or if they do, it's got to be the in-house union, like later on Ford. Ford has a union, but man, was it really? And then people like Post, who will say, well, you got this neighborhood now you can live in, right? And so they'll do enough things, or they'll pay you well enough, or take you out hunting, which I know there's some deer hunting. They had these insane deer hunting parties, right? Where they come back with wagon loads of deer from the UP.
And then parade them up and down.
We don't need a union, right? Because this is fun. And so you get the incentives to, the more you do, the better employee you are. They'll take you on the deer hunting trip up to Marquette or wherever that was, up somewhere in the UP, which would have been an adventure, right? Before the bridge, you get to cross on the ferry. It's a whole thing, right? It would have been pretty cool. And then you come back with your train load of deer and you think, what union, right? And so the companies were pretty good at doing that through much of Battle Creek history.
Yeah, seeing that Ray mentioned the Post name, which I wasn't, ixnay on the cereal stuff, but of course, Kellogg's, had a dental clinic at the factory, he had a day care for his employees. I mean, that was trying to keep the unions out by making sure like I said, the paternalism of a company, they would keep and I would say the illusions. They did take care of their employees, but quite often it was to keep the unions out. But
yeah,
right.
In this case, at least, they worked really closely. We mentioned that John Nichols. I mean, he was a blacksmith, right? And and so he built the business up with his own hands, and that always engenders a lot of respect among other employees.
Yeah.
He was known for knowing all his employees by name, even as they grew. Freely lent his tools and other supplies to people for their home projects. Mm-hmm. Edwin Nichols is probably more of an executive type, but also continued that tradition of.
Yeah, I mean, look at that haircut. That says executive. I mean, you could tell he didn't get his hands dirty.
So, but here is that photo that you talked about, the deer part. I mean, that was an incentive. You did well. You got to go on that company trip up north, and
look how shiny that road is. What do you think all that is?
This is Capitol Avenue. This is the bank corners downtown of Capitol in Michigan. And of course, I was pointing out the sewer system on the left-hand side, the storm sewer there. I'm going like, oh wow, I never seen pictures of how they dealt with the water in the streets, and they dealt with it really well. But yeah, the wagon load of deer, that must have smelled really fresh when they didn't have a lot of refrigeration system. That must have been really nice to have roll through town.
Well, this is November, Kurt. It's cold.
Good point. But still, think how long it would have taken them to get back here, right? To get back to Battle Creek from anywhere up north, right? Yeah. I mean, that was a long trip.
Oh yeah, back then, yes. Uh-huh.
And just to talk about, I mean, obviously in that day and age, people often retired from the place they started to work at, but came across this article about Max Chase, who had been with Nichols and Shepard, and then Oliver, which we'll talk a little bit after the merger. I've been there 50 years. 50 years. I one of the questions I had and didn't really get an answer. And by the way, we've had a couple of comments in from viewers, and viewers are welcome to chime in and correct Kurt. Don't correct me, correct Kurt. But one of the questions I had was, in this era of prosperity, was it shared equitably, and what were the employment prospects for black people living and working in Battle Creek? I don't know the answer to that. I did find this photo and another gentleman who also worked for Nichols and Shepard. Certainly engendered some loyalty, even though there were some competitive issues.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, you look like you're going to add something.
Well, they probably gave him a new hammer to keep, what's the company paternalism for staying for 50 years? There's a new anvil and a new hammer.
Was it Robb or Ray that told the story that they had their own tools because the company didn't supply. I mean, the company supplied them with some basic things, but generally speaking, if you were employed in these places, you brought your own tools with you, and that was also a source of pride. You would have your toolbox you would take with you, and have your tools you would take along with you.
Particularly early on, when you had your apprenticeship and your journeyman, credentials, you take your kit of stuff and you'd head off. Yeah. Oh, there's Oliver. Good.
So yeah, we kind of transitioned the Oliver and merged with Nichols and Shepard and actually a couple of other companies there. And I have another slide that explains a little bit more. Oliver Chilled Plow Works. I don't know what a chilled plow is, but Nichols and Shepard, American Seeding Machine Company, and Hard Par Tractor Company. And so, they really continued going great guns for a long time after that.
And this is an example of another historical development. Once again, not really from here, but a phrase we use in history called vertical integration, where you want to get all the aspects of a certain industry all under one roof, right? So if you're making the plow that opens up the field, then you've got the seeding, excuse me, the seeding, making drills, right? The seeding machine. You got the tractor that's pulling those things, and you got the threshers. You got all the things you need all under one company, and presumably even a wider distribution network or showroom floors across the country, right? And it just keeps going. Well, it shows it on the slide, that it becomes white, and then just keeps getting bigger and getting rebranded and bought and sold and bought and sold. But that initial, that flag in the previous slide is a really good example of that kind of vertical integration, because it actually shows it sort of stacked up like that.
So do we have a picture of the motorboat motor that they made that Oliver's?
We do. Yeah. It's coming right up. They really diversified.
Sorry, just jumping ahead. Sorry.
Well,
I got to follow the script. I got to follow the script.
There you go, sir.
Thank you.
There it is.
I feel better now.
Yeah.
Because that's down at the. Is that at the History Museum? Is that at the Kimball House?
Well, there's one at Kimball House.
I
don't think it's that one.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's a future project. I'd like to see the one at Kimball House working again. I'm gonna at some point try to get that thing going. And by the way, Mac, you asked the question earlier. What's a chilled plow? It's cooling the metal faster than normal, which is supposed to make it harder.
Make it harder.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Oliver got into aircraft fuselage manufacturing right here in Battle Creek. And you can see one of their projects right there on an Air Force plane.
Yep. Because I have friends who actually, older friends, not my friends that were on the school bus that was driven by Mr. Nichols, but that actually worked at the airplane plant, and they employed women there because that's actually 3 women I know worked at the Oliver plant, helping put the planes together during the war or after the war. I thought it was after the war they were building the planes there, but
those Air Force planes. It's an Air Force plane, so it's got to be after the war because the Air Force didn't exist in World War II.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now keep me on track, Ray. Keep me on track.
So Advanced Thresher, it came late after Nichols and Shepard, but it also grew, and in fact, it was one of the largest in the country. Yeah, in the early part of the 20th century, isn't that right? Right.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. 1881. So, so from 48 to 81 is the period with no competition between Nichols and Shepard and Advance. So it was a monopoly until 1881. And then Advance and Rumley will merge later. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. We get more finished entry.
This factory was on Kendall Street. This is where the city municipal garage, I think, is now, where they do work there. But this, this was where we used to build high school floats when I was at Central, when Mr. Nichols was helping us do our floats. But no, we used to go out there, and there were empty warehouses then, these big empty buildings. We'd go back there and be working on floats, and my friends would go, "What was this place?" What? I used to make things up. I know that's shocking, but I would make things up about it. But it was amazing. And Lafayette Street would be on the right here, and the train tracks. There were a bunch of factories all along Lafayette that were really heavy industry out there.
Yeah. I look at all those houses, and you were talking earlier about you're bringing your own tools to work. People also had to walk to work, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really important for the factories to be near houses, and that's why you had some that actually built housing developments for their employees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Coat, most famously, probably in Battle Creek, but I don't think it's the only one.
No.
And there's a photograph of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And still no rubber on the wheels.
Nope.
No rubber on the wheels.
And see, this is where I can only point out certain things like that's Clara's on the rivers in the background there you can see the window on the left. That would be Clara's, the train station back there.
Yeah.
See, when I was told these, I used to think they were a washing machine on wheels. When I was a kid, I'd go, "Why has Mom got these pictures of washing machines on wheels?" It didn't make any sense to me.
And you can see that the technology is kind of standard, right? I mean, there's just a way of building a thresher. You still got the tube for blowing the straw out. You bend it over. You take it back. It's still kind of got the up and down motion. To remove the seeds from the chaff.
Mm-hmm.
And what gets better is it works more efficiently over time. And then once they become self-propelled, that's even better. And then it culminates into the combines that we see today, those monstrosities with their air conditioning and MP3 players and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's not farming.
It kind of looks similar to the Red River Special.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're pretty amazing machines. I mean, you look at these things, you're going like, once again, and I realize by this point engineers are involved in it and doing this, but still, it's pretty amazing that they, you look at these and it's pretty intricate. And I have a friend that always says, you look at these people from the 1800s and early 1900s and think, oh, they were so backwards. They're going, they figured things out. They could figure this stuff out. Now, I like this picture because it shows the chains underneath the front of it. That was how they steered the tractors. Those chains actually, as you move the wheel back and forth, it had a gear that the chain would pull back and forth to turn the wheels on the front. I mean, that's pretty hardcore. It's like, they figured out how to steer the thing. That was pretty amazing.
It would have been kind of hard to steer when you can't see around that stack and whatever that big box is on the front. But,
well, they didn't move fast.
Well, this had the exciting thing of having a roof on it. This was a huge improvement. They had a roof.
I mean, you could walk faster than those sometimes.
Yes.
Plant interior. And so these places, they employed upwards, probably between 500 and 1,000, depending on the time.
Mm-hmm.
The time they were in.
Yeah, well, Advance, actually, I looked that up, so I got it here. Employed at the turn of the century about 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So that's pretty big. Honeycomb big. There, got some cereal.
And this was when the advanced thresher was being torn down.
Mm-hmm.
And they saved that placard, or at least they got a picture of it.
Well, they took a picture of it, yeah. I don't think they saved it.
Well, you never know. But these things are still like showing up at fairs and festivals and things like that.
I think we talked about it. I saw a video where Jay Leno collects cars, and he has a Nichols and Shepard, I think. And there's a video where he shows them driving it. Like Ray said, it doesn't fly along the road. It's not like it's you could pretty much walk in front of it and not be really too terrified of it coming and hitting you. But I mean, it's a huge machine, and to get these things going, you had to build up the steam and get the thing going. But they're pretty amazing.
And they're not going to go fast, but they will destroy your road. But we can't really tell these days anyway. So,
so the next one we move into Union Pump, and that begins in 1884, right? Is that right?
I'm looking right now because the year is escaping me. 1844.
84.
44, I think.
44? Okay.
Oh wait, I'm sorry, 84. 84.
Oh, wow, 44? Really? That was but okay.
Nope.
What were they pumping?
My bad. Yeah.
So it was founded and incorporated, and it originally produced ironworking and woodworking machines.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I found this nice little print of that featured some of their products in the Maccabees program when they were meeting in Battle Creek in 1904, I think.
Wow, I've never seen that picture of the picture. That's pretty amazing. That's cool.
Yeah. And I don't have the technical expertise to tell you what any of these things do, but they look pretty technical. But I mean, at that time, steam pump. What they pump steam, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're used in manufacturing.
Well, weren't they like steam?
They're powered by steam. Yeah, they're powered by steam.
Yeah, they
pump whatever you want,
water or oil or whatever you needed to have pumped.
Yeah.
It was like
They pump your thing. Yeah. And they became international in 1908. They started selling contracts to companies in Great Britain, so it becomes an international company fairly quickly.
And they even had their own cafe.
Yep. It's really bad. I keep feeling really old because I remember that building. I'm going, Rudd.
I feel really young because I remember pictures being in color.
Well, actually, I used to think the world was black and white when my parents would have pictures. I thought, well, the world must have used to have been black and white. It's everything was black and white in all the pictures. But this was quite a factory. This is obviously looking from the air, but the road that's running from the left side up to the right side, that's Capitol Avenue. This would be where I'm going to do this wrong. I call it the Kellogg Research Center, but it has a much longer name. I can't remember. I have to always look it up, but that's where the Kellogg Research Center is now.
Yep.
Because originally, when
you asked me, I'm gonna forget the name of it myself, but I know exactly where it's at. It's kind of behind like the Baptist Church off Michigan.
Yep. Because when they were originally going to create Cereal City USA, which I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up the cereal thing again. Sorry, Ray, I went off on it. They were going to use this building. When I went down there, they were going to actually make this building into Cereal City USA and try to set up a cereal line in it that would actually manufacture cereal. But they had so much trouble realizing creating an actual working cereal line was going to be really expensive and really difficult to keep running because you actually had to have trained people. It couldn't just be me down there pushing a button and having it start making cereal. You actually had to have people who knew what they were doing. But it was a really cool building, the skylights, and it had a separate office building and had a separate cafe, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty
nice.
neat.
Yeah. So with Union Pump, one of their mottos is "In union, there's strength." All right, and so there's some irony in that because they were one of the staunchly anti-union companies, and so the earliest strike I could find for Union Pump was in 1919. The iron molders struck, and then there was another very significant strike in 1937, which is kind of a famous year for strikes in Michigan anyway. But in January of 37, the employees walked out, but the plant stayed operational. So they got some people to come in and do it. But one of the strikers was run over by one of his fellow workers who was not striking as he tried to get into the plant. And he got dragged about 40 feet. His coat got caught in the car. And his buddy dragged him about 40. Well, they weren't buddies anymore. But they dragged him about 40 feet before he got loose. And so Union Pump sort of has a parallel to the big GM strike in Flint at the time, and with some violence, just as there was at the Flint strike.
And that's actually, this is actually a flood picture. In case anyone wonders, that's a picture showing the flood in downtown Battle Creek.
Yeah.
That's why there's water all around the place.
And we got some more pictures of water, right, coming up.
Oh, there'll be some.
Yeah,
There's always a lot of water.
there's floods. Yeah.
So American Marsh steam pipe, that actually began in 1859 when Dorr Burnham, former miller, built a tall chimney on the warehouse he owned immediately north of the Michigan Central Tracks and on the east side of Jefferson Avenue, which today is Capitol Avenue. And there's Dorr there in the upper left, and that group shot there, the guys with hanging the fish. That's Elon Marsh, who we met earlier. He actually joined the company, and it would eventually have his name as well, Marsh Steam Pump.
And the picture on the bottom of the factory, you can see the St. Phil Tiger Room is the warehouse in the left third of the building. You see the peaked roof on it. That's the Tiger Room. It was a warehouse as part of the factory. Mac, you do a great job with this stuff.
You are right back on script. Yeah, that was the pattern room.
There's a script.
We find you better extemporaneous, Ray, so we don't share it with you. And there's their plan again.
Because the story my mom always used to tell, which I'm sure it's in the other stories, is that the St. Thomas was right next to this building, the St. Thomas Episcopal Church, and quite often the sparks from the steam pump company would light their roof on fire. And I should say frequently, periodically they had to go and put the fire out because they would start the roof on St. Thomas burning.
Oh, I mean, just think about how dangerous. It's a tinderbox. Everything's made of wood.
Mm-hmm.
These factories are producing sparks. No wonder we have so many fire stations in town.
Yeah.
And OSHA's all over them on this, I'll bet.
There's a little pre-OSHA, I would say. Yeah.
Wow.
And that doesn't look like a staged photo. A lot of those photos are staged, right? They're just, the guys
Right.
all standing up there looking nice and neat. That one looks like it's a little more candid.
Yeah.
The previous one, maybe that one too. It's a little kind of tight conditions in there.
Well, I'm always fascinated that the wheels and belts on the ceiling were there was a central axle that ran the length of the building, and a steam engine or a power plant would be spinning that, and they'd hook all these devices to that, and run the power off of that. So that's where you see all the belts over their heads. It's like they would use a central power plant.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So Duplex. I mean, this is well, Ray, why don't you introduce it? I mean, this obviously printing.
Looking for that page. There, found it.
Smooth. We're smooth here. We are so smooth.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in class. Just got my notes here. Of course, no one in Battle Creek invented the printing press, right? It's not a Battle Creek invention, but there were certainly some advances once again in printing presses, and there's actually a very long tradition in Battle Creek history of producing printed material. Part of it comes from the Adventists because they produced their tracts, of course, but also there were a lot of music publishers in Battle Creek, and there was a time when sheet music was really a pretty big industry because there was that conspicuous consumption of the 19th century, right? You got to look cool, so you got you a piano for your house. You didn't have to know how to play it, but you had to have the sheet music all over it. And so a lot of that sheet music was printed here in Battle Creek. So there's that demand, and so Duplex comes along, and they say, well, we'll happily print, Adventist tracks, sheet music, whatever you got. And I'm not sure. And Mac, you know this. Who did the Battle Creek papers? Who printed them?
Well, I don't know who all printed the Battle Creek papers. The gentleman on the right there is Joseph Cox, who invented the Duplex Press. And he had been a mayor of Battle Creek at one point as well. He came to town when he was like 24 or something like that. But he went on to found the Enquirer, but he was too poor at the time to afford his own press, ironically, and had to outsource that. We had other printers around town. Obviously, famously, we had the manufacturing, or I'm sorry, the Seventh Day Adventist Publishing House in Battle Creek.
Oh, actually, I'll jump in. Cox, I found it. He is from in Indiana, and he with his own patented press, he printed the Lafayette Daily Journal. So that was the first one he worked on.
Which also is owned by the company that today owns the Enquirer. At least it was a few years ago, the Gannett Company. It's funny how all things come together. But and then of course on the right is Irving Stone, who co-founded the company. And
on the left is Irving Stone.
Oh, okay. On the left is Irving Stone.
Yeah, sorry.
You're right, Kurt. Mistakes become history. We need to correct them.
The only thing I knew in this section, I had to throw that in because, of course, he's who Irving Park is named after, and we did a really cool program. Actually, Mac did a really good job doing an Irving Park program. But yeah, and his house is still on Capitol Avenue, and so yeah, he was an interesting dude.
And so I don't know if I remember it off the top of my head, but the flatbed press. Are you guys getting static?
Yes.
No.
You're not?
No.
Oh, we apologize, folks. Be patient. Hopefully it just goes away by itself. But the flatbed press, which is up on the left-hand side, and I don't know if these actually are what they call the tubular presses, but these things really revolutionized newspaper printing in the United States. And eventually bought out by Boss. But that is what you see in most American newspapers. Those still have their own press.
I did find an editorial inquirer from Duplex, though, from April of 2010. Said the work that a better printing newspapers on the racks seems like people will sell themselves and still they go right to it. And so it's Duplex.
I don't think we're hearing any of what you're saying, right?
I can't hear you. The static is so bad. I'm hearing you.
Do you want me to get back in?
So do either of us know sign language? We could try doing sign language.
We could type comments. Sometimes things just don't go your way. There's Rob.
Here, I'll hit refresh. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but it's really rough sounding. I don't think it's you, Ray. I think it's something in the ether.
So I just muted Ray's mic, and that made it go away.
Uh-oh. This could be trouble then. We're gonna have to do this. So
Ray, why don't Kurt and I will take a Ray? Why don't you come out and come back in? That'll often take care of problems.
So the Duplex Printing Company, this building that you're seeing here, was on McCamley Street, and it's right across from where the present U.S. Post Office is, where the rink is. This is where this building was located.
Okay.
And it was quite it was a beautiful building, and it ran all the way from McCamley Street all the way over to Washington Street at one time. It was a huge facility. Okay, let's try Ray again.
Is it better now?
It's better now.
Yay. All right.
The very technical solution: turn it off and turn it on again.
Yeah.
Sorry, all I could tell him was where it was located. So, and I know I would talk to Mac because I worked at the Enquirer as the Youth Today editor a long time ago, and I used to love coming in and seeing the press working. It was so amazing to look at that huge machine printing the newspaper. I was so impressed to see the thing. It was an amazing piece of engineering.
Yeah. No, it was always a thrill to see those things run and get them up and going. But it was even more of a thrill to run down and tell the press foreman, stop the presses.
Did you get to do that?
I have a typo on a headline on the front page. Oh.
Did you ever get to have him stop the presses?
Well, I didn't do it so dramatically, but yeah, I mean,
I mean,
it was actually
oh,
a fairly
That's a missed
common thing.
opportunity.
because when I worked at the Inquirer, they still had hot press, because they went to cold press right when I got there. They computerized
Hot
it, but when I was there, they still had linotype.
It was
What
hot
was
lead. It was
that was
hot
pretty.
lead. Yeah, and what they did at the time, I'm not a printer, a tradesman, but poured hot lead into molds and created the plates that would turn around and create the newspaper.
It was pretty amazing because you'd go over there, the press, they were like, it was a dirty, filthy place and all oily and stuff. And then after they computerized it, you'd go over there and it would just be quiet and humming and stuff. But I'm sorry. Okay, back to Duplex Printing Company.
Yeah, posed pictures, stylized pictures. Everybody looks happy.
Yeah, they do look happy. It does look cool. I love looking at these photos, but we don't know who the folks are. We know who the guy on the right.
We know who that is.
That's me. I'm taking a picture right there. They're tearing the building down. It's like I have a lot of pictures of me tearing buildings down, but this was it was sad to see this go. But
Yeah.
So if the lesson is, if you show up at my house with a camera, we know we're in trouble, right?
Uh-oh, you found out my secret. Actually, I'm the harbinger of like destruction. I just carry my camera around.
Mhm.
So one of the things I've loved about doing all this research is finding about companies I knew nothing about. Ray, you talk about you write about the Osgood folding boats
Yeah.
in your manuscript, but they are just what they sound like, right?
Yeah, they're canvas. They've got a little bit of foldable frame. You can pack them up, put it on your back, and you can go fishing or exploring up north. They did sell them internationally. I know there's a slide coming up that shows the different outlets for the Osgood portable boat, and of course there's the previous picture showed them standing up in that thing, which seems, I don't know, that just doesn't seem practical or possible. But then you see the profile of the boat, how the hull looks, where it's supposedly more stable in the water. So there's a pretty good design there, I suppose.
Yeah,
I wouldn't stand up in one.
I was always told you're not supposed to stand up in a boat.
Yeah, not one of those. Yeah.
Well, if you're a sportsman, Kurt, you got to stand up.
There you go. Okay.
But
so this gentleman, Osgood, he was also a jeweler.
Mhm.
And there you can see his store right there at what today we know as 2 West, at the corner of what is now Michigan and Capitol.
The building on the right is still there, though.
Yeah.
That's now, I'm going to do this badly. I can't remember what that is now.
Vander something.
Is it an insurance company?
Yeah.
But that's still there. Well, actually, the building on the corner is still there. It's just covered up now. They never tore it down. They just covered it with marble.
Yeah.
No, they're the agencies. Now the Osgood boats were featured in an 1879 edition of Scientific American as one of the great inventions of the era.
Oh, wow.
And the editors described it as a boat which is capable of being folded completely. The body, the covering consists of a skin of flexible, waterproof material. And with paddle for trout fishing, duck hunting, and exploring, it should weigh about 20 pounds total. So you can throw everything in there and go do your fishing. And those Osgood boats were also featured in the 1880 International Fishery Exposition in Berlin. So they had an international reputation.
They should bring those back. I can't believe someone should bring those back. I would think people would like that.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't look real sturdy.
I had a hard time finding photos to go with this, but I did find the catalog in a museum in upstate New York. And one of the descriptions, I think it was this boat in particular, you fold it up, carry it on your back, it weighs 25 pounds.
Yeah. And maybe I don't know how long they lasted, with the folding and unfolding, or maybe there's a bunch of them at the bottom of a lake somewhere. But it didn't seem like a long-lasting material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is another company that was also started before Duplex by Irving Stone, the Union School Furniture Company. And I had not heard much about this either before we walked down this path together. But just as the title's descriptive, they did produce furniture. The but they produced a whole bunch of stuff.
But did they have a union?
I didn't find anything about a union.
I'm guessing not.
No. Mm-mm.
It was just actually probably after the Civil War, using the word union was a good thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was confused because and I'm sorry, this is one of my I only thought the Union School Factory was back where C.W. Post Field was. I was always told that was where it was, and come to find out it was on Capitol Avenue. I once again, my history gets sort of messed up, but because this would be where the Kellogg Foundation building is also.
So, Kurt, you probably remember school desks like this.
Yes, yes, I do.
And the inkwells.
Yeah, I'd always dip the girls' pigtails in front of me.
But they didn't make just furniture. They, globes, everything for the classroom. But it wasn't a very long-lived company.
Mm-mm.
And there you can see what it burned down.
Yep.
And never came back. So it was around from the 1880s into the 1890s, I think.
Yeah, it was brief.
And another one that I had no idea about.
I've never heard of this one. This was a surprise to me. I've never heard of this.
I have it briefly in my manuscript. It's part of the conspicuous consumption idea for post-Civil War houses, where you want something fancy to show off. Photography is becoming more common after the Civil War. So the 1890s become the heyday of the parlor art album, and so you kind of have those sitting about your parlor, your front parlor, which is where you let the fancy part where you let the people in, and then they can go through your cool photographs, and they don't have to be places you've ever been to. You could purchase photographs of postcards. You put those in there, and then you'd sit and have polite conversation. Sitting around a parlor, and so it's easy to imagine doing something like that at Kimball House, right? Where they'd sit around and do. So
why didn't they use their iPads?
Yeah, well, the Wi-Fi at Kimball House is terrible.
There you go. So
we had one of these at the Historical Society, so I took a couple of pictures with my iPhone, not iPad. But yeah,
so do we know where this was, Ray? Do we know where the company was? When they showed this picture of it, I don't expect you to. I just wondered if you knew where it was.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't either, and I did look a lot in the newspaper archive for any kind of evidence of that, and I just didn't find it. And I was visiting my folks over, and they have old photo albums like that, kind of look like this, but nothing in there indicates the manufacturer. So
right.
I couldn't hold them up and say with any authenticity, this was a metal back album. Kurt, I know you would have done it, but
yes, true. Yeah. I know you'd be surprised. I have one of those old albums. I don't know if it's the metal back one, but I printed my own pictures and put them in it when I was in college and would show my friends, and they thought, wow, that was really cool.
Yeah. The Square music, I think more of us have heard this because they stuck around quite a while.
Oh, they're still around, not necessarily in Battle Creek, but
right.
Fender bought them out. But they make a fine instrument. Yeah.
This was a company of V.C. Squire. It was named V.C. Squire, and there he is. There is the gentleman. His father was an instrument maker, I think a violin maker.
He did violins in England.
Yeah. And he went to work with them for a while, and then he came back to Battle Creek and established his business here. Mm-hmm. And they were very fine, reputable instruments.
Mm-hmm. And still are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're quite nice. They made strings for a long time too.
Yeah.
I think cool.
They came in building. I almost call it came in museum. That's something else.
That's still downtown. You can still see part of that building. I think the Rice's shoe shop is where the cotton shop is.
I think you're right.
I think that's where the that building is still there. And yes, it is the Kingman that donated the money for Kingman Museum.
Yeah.
Can you go back one? I'm sorry.
Sure.
No, too far. Back. Go forward there. 2 legs. What was that?
Pants.
That made sense. Okay, all right. So I just had to see what that was. Going 2 legs. Okay.
And a place called One Leg is where you get a skirt, right? 'Cause it's just a pant that just has one hole.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there you see the Squire Company right next to the Consumers Power. Is that what that is?
Yep, that was Consumers Power. Yep, that was on Capitol and State Street.
And another one I sort of came across, United States Register Company. Not cash registers, but
Right.
those metal grates you stand over forced air.
Yeah.
The advent of central air.
See, for us it wasn't air conditioning; it was heat because we had the register in our dining room, and my sisters and I would fight in the morning in the wintertime to stand on the register. You'd almost burn your feet on the metal grate when you stand on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend growing up, and I went to his house one time and stood on the grate, and my Converse Chuck Taylor shoes melted. Like, don't fall on that. But they did adapt to forced air conditioning as well. Their business survived quite a while, and you can see here they had a national footprint.
Because this building is part of it still there, isn't it? Down on, I'm going to do this Burnham Street that crosses the river. Crosses the mill pond.
I don't know if part of it's still there or not.
The shell of it is. I can't remember it because I went down there and seen the walls were still standing, but part of that is still there.
And just some of their advertisements. I actually found a couple of really cool little booklets that advertise their stuff as well. I mean, who knew there was so much innovation that went into air diffusers for forced air? And these things are made of cast iron. They're built to last, unlike the ones that I break all the time in my house.
Yeah.
And there's the demise. And then this was a big deal too. United Steel and Wire, famous for modern grocery cart.
Yeah.
It also did a lot of point of purchase display type things for retail and other products such as that. But
there's those snazzy bumpers on it. Although it looks like a kid could still pinch himself in that seat pretty good, so that's authentic.
If only they'd have come up with cup holders, they'd still be around.
Yep.
Who knew that people would drink while they grocery shop? That factory was destroyed by fire. Did they ever come back after that, Kurt?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
And this is one I had no idea about, and this is the only photo I have, or that I included in this.
There you go. My mom worked at the Battle Creek Bread Wrapping Company before she got married. She worked there. And I know this is wrong because I'm sure we weren't the people that invented it, but my mom always said they invented the bread slicer there. So people say, it's better than sliced bread or whatever, and so they invented that in Battle Creek. The bread slicer.
And once again, mistakes become history. Oh.
Those don't look like bread slicers.
Is this at all related to the cellofoil plant that exists today? I mean,
not that I'm aware of. No.
Same thing as wrapping products. But then the bread wrapper came along and the little wire thing.
The wire thing, yeah.
Yeah.
See, when I was young, we didn't have the wire thing. If you opened the bread, it dried out. That was it. You just you ate
and
the
you
bread.
liked it.
Yeah, but that's right. Yep.
Didn't complain.
And this I've been seeing this building since I've been here for 20 years. On Burchard Street, I have that right?
I think this is on Burnham, isn't it? Isn't it Burnham Street?
Is that Burnham Street? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
But I never knew what that was. And there's a photograph of the plant. A huge merger. I mean, this is a big deal when it was brought into Battle Creek. And what is it called? Basically they stamped parts. A sheet of metal that would be stamped to it with a punch until it came up with that whatever shape that they wanted it to be in. And so, like hose fittings for appliances. And you can see the universal wick boiler, whatever that is. They did it here in Battle Creek. It was universal, or the grease cup. But yeah, it was very long-lived company before it.
A new one free if you love the cup. That's interesting. I went, okay, that was
Grease
right
cup
there.
sounds
Okay.
like my high school cafeteria is a grease cup.
And then, I had no idea that Battle Creek was the home to a major manufacturer of stoves.
Yep.
Stoves. And, all the way from, I guess, all the way back to coal burning or wood burning stoves, right through natural gas and then into electric.
And I don't know, Mac, you probably did better research than I did or Ray does, because AB was just the initials of the two guys that founded it. Yep.
Yeah,
I'm not can't remember what their names is.
I can't either.
Alan and Ben.
As long as there are no follow-up questions.
There we go. Because I know I have an AB stove in my house.
Yeah, we're going to see it here in a minute.
Oh,
you can see that they're pouring a lot of the molds in the foundry, and those guys look like they're having a good time too. I think it might be a little bit staged, but
yeah.
Guy on the left's
I
got
don't know if a good time is quite what I'd call that, but okay, yeah, all right.
But there, one example on the left, and
there's mine on the right. That's actually the stove in my kitchen. That's pretty cool.
It's encouraging that there's no picture of you taking a picture of it, because that would bode ill for that stove.
Yes, who knows? Well, maybe my house could be up for being destroyed any day now. But yeah, that stove is heavy, and all 6 burners work. The 2 ovens work. It is an amazing piece of machinery because that thing still cranks really good. It's got to be from I'm guessing it's from the 30s or 40s would be my guess.
And it's kind of wasted on you because you basically boil water.
I don't know. I don't have no idea how to cook. It's like, yeah.
No, and then another Battle Creek born business, Archway Cookies. Annie Kelly, in her weekly newsletter for the Visitors Bureau, wrote about them recently. Started as Swanson Cookies, right? Right,
yep.
Kurt?
Yep.
And
who doesn't like cookies?
Well, I never understood why they only had the little dot of filling in the middle. I always felt kind of ripped off as a kid, right? Because you had to like 6 of them and tear them apart and reconstruct them so that there's filling in the middle. Otherwise, there's just that little dot of
jelly or whatever's in them. Yeah.
It was pineapple, right? It was the good one. They're all good.
There you go.
Yeah. And so there's the plant that was expanded. Started as Swanson. My reading was that they started out as a donut bakery. Maybe they may also make cookies, but there was a shortening rationing during the war, and they converted to cookies and eventually became Archway Cookies. It's probably compressing the history a little bit. And another one I found out last year while I was going through some old photographs, American Fire Apparatus. One time, Battle Creek was one of the dominant manufacturers of fire apparatus in the country. There's an example of their work there. There was actually... I'm sorry?
It's the back half is the Battle Creek part, right?
Yeah, well, it's all the fittings. I mean, obviously, that's a Ford truck. And I think it's pretty much done the same way now. I mean, I think the chassis and the motor comes from a GM or something like that, and then there are companies that specialize in fitting these trucks with the valves and pumps and things. And we had been focusing all on Battle Creek born businesses. Clark Equipment wasn't born here, but a lot of innovation came about here. And it was such a huge employer, actually in Springfield. That's actually one of their open houses at one of their anniversaries.
So I was looking in the background to see if I was there because I know I'm shocking. Mom took me to one of the open houses there, and the forklift trucks were cool as hell.
Yeah. Now, was the forklift actually invented in Battle Creek? Do we know that? I read that
I've heard
on
that
the internet, so it must be true.
There you go. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that, but I don't know if the forklift was invented here or not.
Yeah.
I like the one with the nuns. That was one of my favorite pictures. The one on the right where the nuns were up there.
Nuns on the run.
There you go.
And they also Autotram. They built railroad cars.
Well, they were trying to compete with railroads and buses. They thought they'd make a single train car that was motorized that could travel between town to town, but apparently it did not take off.
Yeah.
Is that guy flipping us off?
I'm gonna say yes, just because it's fun.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah.
So that I'm sure that we probably missed some, because it's amazing just how much was. And Daphne says those are nuns from St. Mary's
Lake. Okay.
You may be right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that great stove, Kurt, from Robert Ort Bowen.
Thank you, Robin. Yep, she worked with me at the hospital. Robin was really nice. It's like, thank you.
I think gentlemen overstated a little bit, though.
It was such a extraordinary time of innovation and the idea. Of course, it starts when like every other pioneer town, you got to make everything you need, right? It wasn't like these national distributions, but every town was like that.
Mm-hmm.
Battle Creek just had the right mix of people and geography and opportunity, and some really great things came out of it. And some of the legacies, if you do any research, even on your own online, that photograph there is of Henry Ford. He was and Ray, I think you mentioned this in your manuscript. I've read it so many times, but I think it's there as well. Inspired by seeing a Nichols and Shepard traction engine, led him to make his first car, which he's with there.
Yeah.
And then you got Nichols Hospital on the left. On the top picture is Nichols Hospital that John Nichols donated the money for. And then the Irving Park is in the middle picture, which Irving Stone gave the money. And then the old YWCA, which is now Battle Creek Public School Office Building, Mr. Stone donated in memory of his wife.
And it's appropriate because Irving Stone had also been a superintendent of schools in Battle Creek, among other things.
And Henry Ford came to the Battle Creek Sanitarium. He was the first. He was the first one to sign the guest book for the tower section.
Wow, I did not know that. Irving Stone also organized what was called the Port Huron Chicago Railroad. Did I get that right?
No.
But which eventually became Grand Trunk. I'm sure he didn't do it alone, but that's certainly a noteworthy accomplishment. And he organized the Battle Creek Gas Company,
which is the building now Irmish Travel, but that was the Battle Creek Gas Company. Yep.
Yeah. And I also thought that, it's kind of a tangential connection, but we talked earlier about Richard Merritt, who invented the Kellogg Merritt traction engine. The Merritts were staunch Quakers, and his brother Charles, his home was frequently visited by Sojourner Truth. And I read in one account that you could often find Sojourner Truth selling strawberries from the Merritt beds.
Really?
Up there in your neighborhood area, Kurt, where you live, kind of nearby. And a lot of those streets are named for Merritts or their family members, Orchard, all of that.
Well, if we're doing tangents, I got one. You mentioned Grand Trunk, right? And the band Grand Funk Railroad took their name from that, and they're from Michigan. They're from Flint.
Huh.
So there you go.
There you go. And if it weren't for Battle Creek, they would have never existed.
See?
Right. Oh, I think
I
think Del Shannon was from here, though, right?
Yes, he is. Del Shannon was, yep. The Junior Walker and the All-Stars, yep.
Oh, yeah.
And just a couple of other things here. Royal Funeral Home, that was actually the Upton homestead. We talked a little bit about the Upton shop and their contributions to agriculture.
And Mac, just so you know, I just got it's one of those flashes. I didn't realize that was why Upton Street was named Upton. It's on. That's where that house is.
Yeah.
You learn something new. See, I learned something from this. This was I didn't realize that. I really didn't realize that. That's okay. Cool.
And then this house here, that was the Merritt
House.
homestead, and now today Northside Family Practice. Is that right, Kurt?
Yes. And
Yeah.
if you go into part of the house, part of it was put together with wooden pegs. That was before they had lots of blacksmiths in Battle Creek, so part of the house was put together by wooden pegs.
And then on the lower left is the Irving Stone home there on
Capitol Avenue.
now an apartment building, right?
Yep.
Apartment house, chopped up house.
Yeah, I'd still love to see the inside of that. That was supposed to be really quite a place.
Yeah.
I did see that in the comments about Michigan Carton, which I'd never heard of. That's a thing from Battle Creek.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. That was founded to help the cereal manufacturers, basically, right?
We're not supposed to talk about cereal manufacturers.
That's right.
Yeah, it's in the comments. I thought
They'll get their turn. So.
They always get their turn.
Yeah.
That's why I thought when Ray did the stories about manufacturers that weren't cereal, I thought that was fascinating, Ray. I really enjoyed that because,
thank you.
Focus on, people in Battle Creek focus on cereal, which is a huge industry and is what put us on the map in the 20th century. But I thought it was fascinating when you did the stories about other manufacturers in Battle Creek. That was really cool.
I do want to give credit where credit is due. None of that was my idea. Mary Butler came up with the idea, and I'm probably the 10th person she asked, or I'm not sure. I'm certain I wasn't the first person in line, but
well, she finally got the right person because you did it and did a really good job. So thank you.
Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did enjoy it once I got going. Like manufacturing Battle Creek, but once you get into it, it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep it all straight. You guys did a really good job of helping me pull all this stuff together. I do hope Robb is okay. Robb was contributing a tremendous amount.
He has a lot of information about Nichols and Shepard and the steam companies. He has a lot of good information on that. Yeah. I think Ray should sing a song on the way out. I think he should get the guitar.
I don't think that.
Okay. Do a Grand Funk Railroad song. Come on.
Can you name one?
No.
No.
Darn.
It's killing me.
And Daphne is chiming in on Michigan Carton. Folding Carton's bought out by St. Regis in the 70s. Back to Carton.
It's soon going to be closed if they're moving. Aren't they closing the plant this year?
They are.
Oh.
Yep.
So these things go in cycles, and you talk about the vertical integration. Now we live in a world where every little company has different pieces of manufacturing. It's not all under one roof. We didn't really get much into the dispute between John Nichols and Elon Marsh over something he invented while working for Nichols and Shepard. The interesting thing about that, I'm not smart enough to talk about the technical aspects of it, but he ultimately prevailed, I think, but not really. But what was interesting is that it kind of marked the beginning of this idea of corporations owning the work of their employees.
Right.
At the time, employees could kind of take their work with them. Like, if I get fired at Willard Library, I can't take this program with me. Willard Library owns this program. Okay. Not that that's going to happen.
Depends on what we say on the air, Mac. You never know.
Right. Yeah.
So it's
if
just
I
really
stand up and don't have my pants on, this might be the end of your career or mine.
So
I want no part of this.
And I want to tell people that just so they know that Mac really isn't flying in a plane above Battle Creek. He's got this cool green screen behind him where he's got this picture of Battle Creek. He's not really floating above Battle Creek.
That's true.
And, before we're done, I want to say, Mac, once again, thank you for putting this show on, because I know you do a lot of work outside of your job. You do a lot of work on this. I just come along for the ride and have a good time. And Ray, you did all the research on this. Where once again, I just nod my head and go, oh yeah, that's what happened. But you guys did a really great job with this. It's like and people really enjoy it. I get lots of people commenting about seeing the Willard Library program, and this is great. I'm so glad you did this, Mac. This is so good.
Yeah,
well, thank you. It's a lot of fun for me too.
Yeah, I enjoyed being
I
part
feel
of
like
it.
I'm learning a lot about the community every time I sit down, and it's just really interesting. So with that, thanks everybody for joining us. I'm seeing a little bit of a delay on my screen, so I hope it's not too discombobulating for everybody else watching. Our next program, Peeks into the Past, we are working on a program with some folks on Sojourner Truth.
Cool.
So I'm feeling a lot of pressure about that, because that's something you want to get right.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of reading, and so that program will be on November 22nd. So mark your calendars and come join us.
Nice.
So there is quite a delay. There's like a 10-second delay. So it's a good time to sign off.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Ray. Guys, you hang on while I close out the broadcast, and we'll talk here in a second. There's one more comment. We've got time for one more comment. Thanks,
Hi, Chris. Thank you.